TIL Helen Viola Jackson, who died in December 2020, was the last surviving Civil War veteran spouse. She was married to someone alive at the time of Abraham Lincoln. I love that there's a picture of her on Wikipedia where she looks a million years old and she's really only 35 and it's a costume for a town fair. Viola. Civil War widows who survived into the 21st century. I had a 6th grade teacher and was a bit older, close to retiring, and she had taken care of a 100-year-old woman for a short time when she was younger, and the lady claimed her father was in the Ford Theater when Lincoln was shot. Whether this was true or not, the timelines matched up. We aren't as removed from history, especially American history, as we often perceive. I just put this into a compound interest calculator. $70 per month, starting in 1939 and running through 2020, compounding annually at 8 interest, which is very conservative, is over $5 million. Obviously, she never would have just invested it and never touched it, but damn, I remember watching an I've Got a Secret episode on TV when I was a kid, where the secret was that the guests had watched the Lincoln assassination at the Ford Theater. The past is not quite as far away as we sometimes think. Yes, somehow I got told when I wasn't looking. TIL Helen Viola Jackson, who died in December 2020, was the last surviving Civil War veteran spouse. She was married to someone alive at the time of Abraham Lincoln. It'd be pretty difficult to be a Civil War veteran without being alive at the time of Lincoln. Not taking anything away from her, but given the dates, she was a child bride, at best a teenage bride. Not sure I would applaud or even honor that. Nonetheless, I'm sure she had a notable life and would love to have heard some of her stories. It's worth noting, she was only 17 when she married 93-year-old James Bolin, a Civil War veteran. She was 101 when she passed. I know that's in the article, but you know how people are with silly things like reading Lowell. My history teacher in high school in the early 90s had the head of the post-Russian Revolution government Alexander Kerensky as a professor when he was in college. These things didn't happen that long ago. Oldest Living Confederate Widow Tells All was a quite popular book. Was even made into a mini-series. Not quite as old, but similarly somewhat interesting. John Major, UK Prime Minister 1997's father was born in 1879. Which means that he reached adulthood whilst still in the Victorian era. I was thinking the Civil War ended 155 years ago in 2020 when she died. How in the hell was she married to a Civil War vet? But he was really old, she was really young. That tracks. A few weeks ago my uncle sent a picture of the original letter my great-great-grandfather got that discharged him from the Union Army after the war. It's in amazing condition. These things happen when a very young man fights in a war. And then when he's in his 90s, he marries someone very young, and she lives into her 90s or beyond. These weird time oddities are going to become much more rare as society sides against child brides getting married to octogenarians with war pensions. It's trippy thinking about how the American Civil War was only about 2 old people ago. The American Revolution was just 3 old people ago. Joe Biden was born closer to Lincoln's presidency than his own. The Civil War wasn't really that long ago. Historically speaking, Lincoln died in 1865. From my math, that would make her 155 at her death if she was born the day he died. I call B. It wasn't that long ago, really. Things change so much so fast. Our lives are like synapses firing. Just blip, blip, blip. I may have missed it in the article, but did they say how much she was collecting at the end of her life? There's a televised interview with a man who was present in the theater when Lincoln was assassinated. The shame of slavery was not that long ago, and in various forms it is still alive in America. Vote. This is how men with pensions took care of girls who would never marry back in the day. I sure hope a Civil War veteran was alive when Lincoln was president. WTH is this title? Is she who the book Oldest Living Confederate Soldier's Widow Tells All is based on? This is a dubious distinction. She was born 54 years after the end of the Civil War. I was just wondering what year the last surviving Civil War veteran spouse died in. I just wonder why traitor soldiers got pensions. They should have gotten hanged. Oldest Living Confederate Widow Tells All 1994. Donald Sutherland. Dion Lane. My husband was in the Civil War. X200B. Sure, Gran, let's get you to bed. Prior to reading this, if I had to take a wild guess, I'd be way off. Slavery is not some distant tragedy. It was one person's life ago. A sugar baby will be our last remaining person who witnessed 9/11. For her sake, I hope it was all to get his pension or something. It's mind-blowing how much the world changed in her lifetime. Feeling very old that my grandmother was born in the 1800s,